Alexander III of Macedon. You probably know him as Alexander the Great. His name just echoes through history, doesn't it? His life was this incredible, explosive decade of ambition and conquest where he completely redrew the map of the ancient world. But who was the man behind that legendary name? Well, let's find out.
I mean, that quote just says it all, right? It perfectly captures the puzzle that was Alexander. He was a man of just staggering contradictions. On one hand, a military genius, but on the other, capable of shocking cruelty. A visionary leader who was also deeply passionate and, let's be honest, sometimes incredibly volatile. In this explainer, we're going to journey through his unbelievable life to try and understand the man who really became a myth.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to trace his journey in 5 key parts. We'll start with him going from prince to king, then dive into his massive conquest of Persia. From there, we'll see him become the Lord of Asia, explore his vision for a whole new kind of empire, and then, finally, we'll get to the sudden, final chapter of his story.
So where does a legend like this even begin? Well, it all starts back in the Kingdom of Macedonia. We're talking a royal birth, an absolutely world-class education, and yeah, a pretty bloody path to the throne that would set the stage for everything that came next. So, picture this. It's 356 BC. Alexander is born to the powerful King Philip II and his, let's say, intense wife, Olympias. He was groomed for power from day one. But his education? It was on another level. His dad hired the philosopher, Aristotle, who taught the young prince everything from politics to ethics to science. But this unique training got cut short. In 336 BC, his father was assassinated. And suddenly, a 20-year-old Alexander is thrown onto a throne that he's going to have to fight to keep. And he did not mess around. Alexander knew his position was shaky, so he moved with lightning speed and just complete ruthlessness. He executed any potential rivals to the throne, and that included his own family members. His mother, Olympias, was just as relentless. Before he could even think about conquering the world, Alexander first had to lock down his own kingdom through a campaign of cold-blooded elimination.
Okay, with his power base in Macedonia and Greece totally secure, Alexander turned his eyes to his father's biggest dream, the invasion of the mighty Persian Empire. In the spring of 334 BC, he crossed into Asia, and honestly, the world was never going to be the same again. He led a massive army of 37,000 men. Now, to put that into perspective, he was marching this force into the Achaemenid Empire. That's Persia, which was the largest and richest empire the world had ever seen. This was an incredibly audacious gamble. It really speaks to his supreme confidence and, of course, the insane loyalty of his men.
And look, this was no ordinary army. At its heart, you had the Macedonian phalanx, which was this terrifying wall of soldiers armed with 18-foot-long pikes called sarissas. They were the anvil that would hold the enemy in place. And then you had his elite companion cavalry acting as the hammer, just smashing into their sides. This whole combined arms strategy made his army the most sophisticated and deadly military machine of its time, hands down.
Now, check this out, because Alexander's strategy here was just brilliant. The Persians had a huge advantage at sea, so instead of trying to fight them on the water, he used his land army to capture their port cities, one by one. No ports, no bases, and suddenly their powerful fleet was basically useless. It was pure strategic genius. The victories just started stacking up. First, a big win at the Battle of the Granicus. Then, in 333 BC at Issus, he faced the Persian king himself, Darius III. Alexander led this incredibly daring cavalry charge that just shattered the Persian lines and forced Darius to literally flee for his life, leaving his own family behind. The momentum was completely unstoppable. So, after that huge victory at Issus, you can feel the entire campaign start to shift. Alexander is no longer just some foreign invader. He's starting to act like the new ruler of these lands he's conquering.
And when he gets to Egypt, he's not seen as a conqueror at all. He's seen as a liberator from Persian rule. So in this hugely symbolic and strategic move, he's welcomed and crowned pharaoh. Now this gave him a legitimacy that went way beyond being just some foreign general. In the eyes of the Egyptian people, he was now a rightful king.
Alexander was a master of political theater. He totally understood the power of religion. Just like he'd gone to the oracle at Delphi in Greece for a blessing, in Egypt he journeyed deep into the desert to the oracle of Amun. And what do you know? The oracle proclaimed he was of divine origin. This wasn't just about ego. It was a really clever move to legitimize his rule for all of his new subjects. And while he was in Egypt, he founded the first and definitely the most famous of his many cities,
Alexandria. Right from the start, it was designed to be a new center of the world, a buzzing crossroads of commerce, culture, and learning that would fuse the very best of Greek and Egyptian civilization.
But the war wasn't over yet. Darius had raised another, even bigger army. At a place called Gaugamela, the fate of the Persian Empire was going to be decided. And even though he was vastly outnumbered, Alexander's superior tactics won the day. Darius fled again, and the Achaemenid Empire, that's the official name for the Persian Empire, was effectively shattered. The road to the heart of Persia was now wide open.
So, after Darius is murdered by his own men, Alexander's mission enters this whole new, kind of controversial phase. He's no longer just a Macedonian conqueror. He starts to become the successor to the very kings he just defeated. And this brings up a huge question that really defines the rest of his reign. Was his goal simply to impose Macedonian rule on everybody? Or was he trying to create something brand new, a blended, hybrid empire that would merge the cultures of the East and the West? I mean, he started wearing Persian royal clothing and adopting their court customs. He even pushed his soldiers to marry local women. But you can imagine, for his traditional Macedonian veterans, the guys who saw themselves as conquerors, these changes were deeply unsettling. They started to see their king less as a Macedonian leader and more as some kind of foreign despot.
Yeah, this new cultural policy, combined with years and years of non-stop campaigning, created enormous tension. Alexander's absolute power led to him becoming more and more of a despot. He executed old friends he suspected of treason and had to put down several mutinies among his own tired and resentful troops. The invincible leader was now facing rebellion from the inside.
But despite all that turmoil, Alexander's ambition just had no limits. He pushed further and further east, into lands no European army had ever even seen, as if he was searching for the very edge of the world.
In India, after winning yet another grueling battle, Alexander wanted to push on. But his army had finally reached its breaking point. After 8 years and thousands of miles, his exhausted soldiers flat out refused to go any further. For the first time, Alexander was forced to give in to the will of his own men. He really had no choice but to turn back.
So he returned to Babylon and made it the capital of his massive empire. But he wasn't planning on relaxing. New campaigns were already in the works. He was going to conquer Arabia next. But right in the middle of all these plans, in June of 323 BC, he got sick and died within days. The cause is still a mystery. Was it a fever? Poison? We may honestly never know for sure.
He was only 32 years old. Just let that sink in. 32. In a little over a decade, he had forged the largest empire the world had ever seen. The scale of what he accomplished in such a short life is still just staggering to think about.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question about his legacy. Was his vision of this fused universal empire a real glimpse of a new kind of civilization? Or was it a dream that was so tied to his singular genius that it was always destined to die with him, leaving his generals to just tear his empire apart? That is the enduring question of Alexander the Great.